So it's 7 o'clock. If we start right now, we're gonna be really, really on point.
Let's do it.
They are going to be
Punctual for once.
surprised.
So should we start?
Yeah.
Okay. Then I guess I will start as the first speaker. Hello, everyone. I am Simona, the National Coordinator of the Global Entrepreneurship Week for North Macedonia. It's my great pleasure to greet you all on this meeting here. Regarding the Global Entrepreneurship Week, this is an event that is right now at this moment happening in 180 countries in the whole world, and we are actually part of the 20,000 partners that are organizing over 40,000 events. So I have to say that I am very honored to be part of this with the Startup Macedonia. In terms of the Global Entrepreneurship Week, we are organizing this with Startup Macedonia since year 2018. And I am very happy to see here among our attendees, so our guests, the very first people that actually supported us when we started 3 years ago. Those are Mimi Makedonska and Maria from USAID, our most loyal partners and supporters in the week. And I would also like to address that the purpose. Okay. Yeah. So I will go back to what I was saying. I would like to stress that I'm very proud of Startup Macedonia and the whole team, because we started with only one event in year 2018, and now this year we have 43 events. I think that the rise from 1 to 43 events in only 3 years is one more confirmation that the whole ecosystem is really supportive for such initiatives, and that the ecosystem and all partners have the trust in Startup Macedonia for organizing and hosting this week, hosting this initiative that in global scale has the purpose of celebrating and promoting entrepreneurship, discussing relevant topics, and addressing the challenges in hope for looking for solutions. There are 4 global topics that are part of the Global Entrepreneurship Week this year, and those are entrepreneurial education, cooperation in terms of the ecosystem institutions, then it is inclusive entrepreneurship, and policy making. This year, Startup Macedonia is organizing this flagship event right on the topic of policy making, because we believe that good quality lobbying on the side of the civic sector, resulting into good cooperation with the government, would actually mean that there will be quality policies brought and enacted in the ecosystem. So without further ado, I would like to announce now the speakers in the first part, so the greeting speakers. Right after me, it will be the Deputy Prime Minister in charge of Economic Affairs, Mr. Fatmir Bitiki. Afterwards, it will be Her Excellency, the Ambassador of the United States, Mrs. Marie-Kate Burns. After her, it will be Her Excellency, the Ambassador of Switzerland, Mrs. Sibyl Suter-Tejada. After her, it will be Johan Despotovsky, the former director of the Fund for Innovation and Technological Development, who also, by the way, is among our most loyal supporters since the first year we started organizing the Global Entrepreneurship Week. So thank you very much for that. And last but not the least, it will be the President of Startup Macedonia, Dejan Aleksov, with a greeting speech. Thank you all for dedicating your time to be with us, and I would like to invite Mr. Bitiki to proceed with his opening speech.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you, Simona. Dear Excellencies, dear entrepreneurs, dear future startups. Actually, I'm very glad that I will end my long Monday day with the most positive and goal-oriented and the future of our society that's talking about economy, talking about startup ecosystem. Discussing for me an important issue, and that's how we might work on the future and development of the startup community in our country. First of all, I would like to thank you all for your dedication and work, but as well bringing a new perspective to us who are part of the decision making and policy creation. I would like to reaffirm our commitment as government for future development of the startup ecosystem in North Macedonia. I believe that is not only our duty to create opportunities and enabling environment for you, but it is our privilege to be there for you and make this happen. In the past 3 years, from 2017 to 2020, the fund has supported around 550 companies, half of them startups, with total investment of investment cycles of more than 75 million euros. And I think that is amazing, but that's not all. I think that it can be even better. As you probably know, last week we have adopted the projected budget for 2021, and in it, the Fund for Innovation and Development is supported with 17.5 million euros, or more than 2 million euros than last year, approximately more than 15% more budget than last year. This is a step forward to show our not only commitment, but the dedication, or how we will support not only the startup ecosystem, but the entrepreneurship as such. Furthermore, I'm pleased to be the first to be able to share with you that a process that we are just going to start. And that is, for the first time in our country, we are going to build the strategy for support of the startup ecosystem, in which we would be happy to have you all together share your vision for development of this sector. We have spoken before that our main goal is to make Macedonia a startup hub of the region. And I think that through this strategy, we will enable some. I hope that together we are going to do that through an inclusive process of building, not only creating the strategy, but creating policies that will enable you, the existing and the new startups in Macedonia. In this occasion, I would really like to send my biggest congratulations to Mr. Despotovsk for his work so far in the Fund for Innovation. He has done quite a lot. He has done everything that was supposed in the period when he served the position to create enabling environment for startup ecosystem as far as it was possible. I know that in the new position in the Technological Industrial Zone Directorate, he will do quite well. But at this occasion, we probably have to think on the next steps of the government. And today is my privilege probably that I will be among the first from government officials to congratulate Kosta Petrov taking over the position of the director of the fund. I know that he will be a valuable asset for the fund, but the valuable link between the ecosystem and the government. And normally I would expect that he will he will send the fund to the next level. It is important that you know that you have a strong and committed partner that is going to support you in your future endeavors. My final message to you all is that don't limit your challenges, but challenge your limits. Thank you for your time.
I believe Her Excellency Mrs. Marie-Kate Burns is now.
Great. Thank you, everybody, and good evening. I'm so honored to be here with so many talented entrepreneurs, investors, policymakers, the minister, startup enthusiasts, and that we could celebrate the opening of Global Entrepreneurship Week together. I really want to thank Startup Macedonia for making this event possible, and just note how great it is to see local organizations leading the way in learning and collaboration. Over the past 4 years, there's no question that Startup Macedonia has been one of the main drivers for the rapid growth in North Macedonia's startup sector, and you've been doing an incredible job bridging the gap between the startup community and the policymakers, making sure that they're an important part of the decision-making process. And that's important, obviously, because a good startup climate requires favorable policies and it requires funding opportunities. And the government can here play an important role, as it has been doing and can continue to do, building an environment where newly created companies can thrive, in which there are opportunities for collaboration and investment, and where the barriers that entrepreneurs face are removed. And even small challenges here can go a long way, particularly in challenging times like this, when businesses face uncertainty. The economic disruption that COVID-19 has caused has been massive, and entrepreneurship is more important than ever. Easing access to finance for startups will help revitalize the economy and create opportunities for the private sector to thrive, which will in turn enable the kind of holistic economic growth that the country and its strategic partners have been hoping to see. And that's why we, through USAID, support local actors to find solutions, both for the startups and for the investors. And I think that today's event is just one of the many opportunities we will have this week to talk about how we can continue to foster this robust discussion between the startup community and the government, and many others who support throughout the business sector. It is my sincere hope that you will succeed in accelerating investment in new businesses and in creating the financial frameworks that stimulate innovation and the use of technology. Because the jobs you create in the industries that you transform will move North Macedonia further on its road toward self-reliance. And I know that this is not an easy journey, but events such as this reinforce my conviction that North Macedonia is very much advancing down this path. I just want to note, from our perspective in the United States, how impactful entrepreneurship has been. According to the 2019 Global Entrepreneurship Monitor Report, of the 202 million working age adults in the country, 27% are starting a business or running a business that they own and manage. 66% of them are motivated by impact, by having a goal to make a difference in the world. And their new products and services and technology are enabling new markets to be developed and new wealth to be created. In fact, 32.5% of the US entrepreneurs expect to create 6 or more jobs in the next 5 years. So drawing on our experience with innovation in the private sector, the United States has supported entrepreneurship programs in most of the USAID assisted countries around the globe, including here in North Macedonia. Your economic growth and increased prosperity are our shared interest in our strategic partnership. So on behalf of the United States government, I want you to know that we are your partner in this journey. We believe that you will create opportunities and prosperity that will bring financial well-being to all of your citizens and create better conditions for not only current but future generations. And we hope that your successes will inspire young people to develop ideas into thriving businesses right here in North Macedonia. That is the promise that we see in you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Burns. And now I would like to invite Her Excellency Mrs. Sibyl Suter-Tayada for her speech.
Dear friends, good evening. It is a great honor to be again with you for the 3rd year in a row, and I'm happy to see that our family has grown tremendously since our first Global Entrepreneurship Week in 2017, with no less than 44 satellite events happening this week with 54 partner organizations and 120 speakers. Switzerland has been supporting the establishment of the startup ecosystem in North Macedonia since 2015. I'm proud to see that together with our friends from USAID, in only 5 years, we helped a fragmented community to grow into a well-functioning startup ecosystem. As a result of these joint efforts, North Macedonia startup ecosystem is now enjoying a time of growth, consolidation and collaboration, and is now capable of generating increasingly sustainable organizations, communities of like-minded people, and ultimately more competitive startups and entrepreneurs. One of the main drivers behind the ecosystem development was the Swiss support to help establish Startup Macedonia in 2016. Today, this umbrella organization is paving the way in positioning North Macedonia as a startup hub in the Balkans. Startup Macedonia is unique in the region and plays a key function as main tracker of ecosystem development and acts as a bridge between government and startup community. With Startup Macedonia, the local ecosystem is ready to accelerate and create new generations of competitive startup capable of competing globally. But what we have all learned on this journey is that the ecosystem is complex, and while it should be entrepreneurs-driven, it cannot function nor thrive without the strong support of the policymakers. I am happy to see that policymakers are recognizing and reaching out to Startup Macedonia for future collaboration and joint efforts in strengthening the startup ecosystem. Getting economic growth and job creation from entrepreneurs is not a numbers game. It is about enabling the growth of resilient business, especially in these challenging times we live in today, the COVID-19 crisis, when fast adaptation to the changes become prerequisites for survival and success. I encourage policymakers to continue to work closely with the business community in crafting and developing strategies and policies that really addresses ecosystem needs for growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Tejada. I would now like to invite Mr. Despodovski to give his opening speech.
Симона, благодарам. Почитуван вице-премиер Фатмир Битичи, Your Excellencies, Madam Tejada and Madam Burns, and all the other guests. I continue in English. So basically, this is my basically last appearance as in my capacity as now already former director of the fund. Actually, we made a handover ceremony today with Costa. So yeah, I join also the nice words from Fatmir that I wish actually that Costa takes the fund to the next level. It's very important that what Mr. Bitici and I think Madam Tejada also mentioned about the regional aspect of the story together in the past years is already basically went out beyond the borders of North Macedonia, and now in cooperation with the Regional Cooperation Council and the World Economic Forum, we have succeeded to bring the Macedonian Innovation Fund into the focus of all the 6 Western Balkan governments. And now with the political declaration of the leaders from the Sofia summit from last Tuesday, now the Regional Innovation Fund, which should basically host it and designed on the basis of the model of the Macedonian Innovation Fund, is already a reality, because there we already have a firm political commitment from all the political leaders from the Western Balkans that this is going to happen. So this is a huge, I think it's a huge step forward for not only for the Innovation Fund of Macedonia, not only for the government of Macedonia, but for all of us present here. So this is basically a very good news for the startup community from the Western Balkans region in general. What I'm going to say is that today we also discussed with the new director of the fund. There are 2, let's say, main initiatives that will keep me also as well, because in the past 3 years, I kind of fell in love with the whole startup ecosystem and the operations. So thank you, Simona, for the nice introductory words. But actually, I enjoyed our cooperation very much. Actually, the pleasure was all mine on this side. We have been discussing about two major, actually, things that need to occur in the next period, where we can actually cooperate also institutionally and bring in also the foreign investors which are already present in North Macedonia. The first thing is the science and technology park, which is something that we have been discussing over the past year, and it's something that needs actually to occur in the very near future. It's something that we have agreed together with Costa that we need to work together institutionally now, both the Directorate for Technological Industrial Development Zones, which is hosting most of the foreign investors in the country, and the Fund for Innovation and Technology Development, which will open up the possibility for many of the young people in the country to step in, not as employees into the supply chain, but to get in as businesses. What our interest is, of course, to see as much as possible local businesses for the global companies and global markets. So this is something that we're going to work on the next years. So yes, startup community in Macedonia, pay attention and look into this, because there will be possibilities here definitely opening. And the second thing is that we have been discussing about is something that we have been working also with the EU delegation the past year, and this is the setting up a separate investment fund that will be based on equity investments, which will be something which will be new for the country, focusing on Green Deal and circular economy, where again we would like to see large foreign investors stepping in and putting their money into the ecosystem. We would like to see as much as possible cooperation between the local businesses and the large foreign investors. So this is point number 2, where again I would say for the local startup community, yes, please follow and see, because there will be a huge market and huge possibilities opening up here. Yeah, I would not go much into the details. Fatmir already mentioned a lot of the things that we have so far achieved, but again, this is not it's not still a completed project. The Fund for Innovation and Technology Development has still a lot of potential to be fulfilled. So yeah, I mean, again, it was a great pleasure to work with the startup community in the past 3 years. I'm not leaving, I'm still here. So yeah, I look forward to continue our cooperation in the next period. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jovan. And now I would like to invite the president of Startup Macedonia, Dejan, to give us his greeting speech.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for attending this year's Global Entrepreneurship Week. Unfortunately, we are meeting online in these tough times, but this will end, because tough times never last, but tough people do. And in that regards, I would like to thank the tough and the tireless crew of Startup Macedonia who hands-on prepared this week. I want to thank all the partner organizations as well that are doing events this week, 44 in total. So I hope that this week people will learn something more, they will get inspired and motivated. So Startup Macedonia exists something more than 4 years now. One of our main goals always was and still is improving the policy regulation for startup companies. And that's why I'm so glad that today's event is built around that topic. Improving the regulation and adapting law amendments is a hard process, and we need support from everyone, both public and the private sector. So that's why we invited representatives from key institutions in order to make them promise that they will help in improving the regulation. And whenever we show up with a regulation initiative in the future, we will play back the video of this event today and remind them about what we talked here today. So I will be very short, and on the last note, I would like to call out everyone to join Startup Macedonia and support us by becoming premium members on our community platform online that we are building together. So in order to continue the debate, I would like to give the stage to Simona again so they can open the panel discussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Once again, thank you everyone for your opening speeches. I would like to invite now everyone to turn on so that we can make one picture, and then we can proceed with the panel. So please turn on your cameras. Okay. Do we have the picture? All right. Then thank you very much. I would also like to invite the panelists that gave the opening speeches to remain for the second part of the event for the panel discussion, listen to our panelists. And I would now like to give the floor to Ivana to proceed with the panel discussion. Thank you once more.
Thank you, Simona. And now we're getting to the second part, or the meat of the event that we're organizing today. With me, I have representatives from different institutions that can give us an overview of their perspective in terms of how important and what is the role of policy making in building a successful and high growth startup ecosystem. So without further ado, I will call each and every one of them to give a brief introduction of who they are, and then we can go forward with the panel discussion. I will start with Ms. Tanja Markovska.
Good evening, everybody, dear ambassadors, dear Deputy Prime Minister, Director of the Fund, the organizer, Startup Macedonia, and all the other startup and innovation enthusiasts that are following us. My name is Tanja Markovska. I'm coming from the World Bank, the private sector specialist here in country. And I have been engaged with the startup ecosystem in this past year very extensively, but also before as well. And I'm very happy to see the progression that the startup ecosystem has made in the past few years. Before I get into a discussion on the legal changes that are necessary for the future, I would like to just take an overview of what has been happening in the past and learn from there. So there have been a lot of developments in the past few years in the startup ecosystem.
Hi. Tanya, sorry to interrupt. We can just go with the rest of the panelists, and then we can just jump into the discussion.
No problem.
Thank you. Igor?
Thank you, Ivana. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining this event. My name is Igor Majov, co-founder and program manager of Startup Macedonia, and also investment facilitator as part of the Swiss CP entrepreneurship program. We've been active for the past 4 years as an organized ecosystem, and the ecosystem itself is for much longer present, but we can just see all the potential and all the efforts that we have done in the past 4 years now culminating with this event and the discussions that we are having now to really make the significant change for the benefit of the startups and the whole ecosystem. Thank you, Ivana. I will let the floor to Darius.
Thanks, Igor. Now we have Nina. Let's mix it up a bit.
I see the gender balance, Ivana, that you're doing over here. Thank you for, first of all, for the invite to be in this panel, as I do believe that this is maybe one of the first steps that we have a panel that is structured like this. My name is Nina Nikolic, and I've been actively building and developing the startup ecosystem for more or less 6-7 years right now. Many of the people from the ecosystem know me as the voice of the ecosystem, as I've been working a lot in the field, but my official positions actually, my job titles are basically co-founder of Startup Macedonia, program officer for the Swiss Entrepreneurship Program, and leader for the Womenpreneur Stories and now Womenpreneurs Balkan Initiative. Looking much forward to what we're going to promise tonight.
Thanks, Nina. And last but not least, our newly appointed director of the Innovation Fund, Costa.
Hello, everyone. Good evening, and thank you so much for the invitation to be part of this great initiative. Big bravo for Startup Macedonia for organizing this event on a topic that is really, really important. I come from the private sector. I'm founder of P-World, and up until Friday, I was the managing director of the company. It's an international agency that we started 10 years ago. Now it's present in 40 markets. So I've been, I understand the startup journey, I understand the problem that founders have, and I'm really looking forward on working with all of you and using my experience and learning from you at the Fund for Innovation and really creating something that is that exists only on paper now, but hopefully with great cooperation, we'll make it a reality for all of us.
Thanks so much, Costa. And now we can jump in and start what I hope will have an interesting discussion. I know policy is not something that gets everyone excited, but it is a fact that policy making can heavily influence the building of the economy. In this case, in this particular case, we're talking about the development of the startup ecosystem, and policy making can contribute to either encouraging or discouraging this growth, the growth of our young startup ecosystem. So I hope that today we will be able to sort of discover what would be the best route towards good policy making and how this can contribute to the further growth of our young ecosystem. I know that the private versus the public sector have different views in terms of how important and what is the role of policy. So I think I'll start the discussion with Tanya, because she's the representative of the World Bank, and she probably could give us an unbiased view in terms of the importance and the role of policy making in the growth of the startup ecosystem.
Thank you so much, Ivana. I would like to start first by saying a little bit about what has been done in the past and why support to the innovation ecosystem and startup ecosystem is so important. In the last 5 years, we have seen a significant growth of entrepreneurial activity in country, and that is largely due to the new policy that the government has introduced through the law on innovation, through which they decided to establish the Fund for Innovation and support the startups in the country. So over the past 5-6 years, over 350 startups have been supported, and the total amount of funding that went to them almost exceeds 30 million euros. So it is a substantial financial contribution to this sector. And I'm very happy to see that there are significant results in this area. The first result I would like to point out that it has started to shift the understanding that innovation is something that happens in science labs. Through the support and the work of Fund for Innovation, we have seen that it's not really the case that R&D happens only in academic institutions, but that it can also happen in companies of different sizes, whether they are new or whether they are older, and regardless of the industries in which they are participating. So if you take a look of the companies that have benefited from the support from the Fund for Innovation, if it was predominantly IT companies early on, now it is a mix of companies from all different industries, including much more traditional industries like food production, like apparel, etc. So it helps bring the understanding that innovation is something that should be happening every day in any kind of business and not just in the isolated scientific environments. The other thing that the support to startups have helped is in retaining talent. If you look at who works in the companies that have been supported, it's quite a few people that have either studied abroad, worked abroad, or also studied here in country, but decided to pursue job opportunities here rather than moving abroad. So if we are looking for a strategy to prevent brain drain in the country, I think that the innovation and support to startups is one of the key instruments that the government should support to do that. Another thing that is also important is to see that these companies that have been innovating are much more likely to eventually export. And we know how important this is for Macedonia. Macedonia is a small landlocked country. So any company that has a strategy to work only in-house, only within the borders of our country, does not have a very good promise of success in the future. Companies have to look how to get to new markets, and innovation, both in business operations and in product development, is crucial for something like that. So now that I have discussed a lot about why is innovation and startup important, let me talk about some of the deficiencies of the approach that the government has been having so far. The first thing is that this is an expensive program. As I said, over 30 million euros have been spent so far, and the Deputy Prime Minister mentioned another 17 million in the upcoming budget year. So it is not a cheap intervention to support startups. And the proposal that we want to make is to see how we can get the government to share this cost with private investors. And in that case, what we have seen is that the overall abundance years has actually made it very difficult for existing investors in country to find clients. Because if you are a startup company and if you look for funding, a grant is always much more attractive than an equity investment, which by the way brings in quite a lot of control and monitoring of the operations of the company compared to grant provided by a government agency, which has much more limited capacity to perform reviews of the performance of the company. So that is one issue that has happened with significant government support to startups. But also there is another issue which comes with smart money. When you talk about government support, there is quite a lot of technical assistance that is coming with the funding, but it is not specialized in ways in it should be for companies in very sophisticated, who operate in very sophisticated niches where you need significant knowledge of the industry, of the trends, of new business models, etc. So I hope that with this I have given you a good overview why we need private investments in country. They will help shift mentality of the beneficiaries of the startup companies from receiving grants to receiving equity, which is very important for their further growth because there is only so many grants you can receive. At one point of time, you have to get out on the open market and get financing from private sources. The second thing is that whenever you have private investments, the quality of selection of the recipients is improved significantly, meaning that private fund managers are much better positioned to evaluate the business ideas that are presented in front of them. And finally, as I mentioned, smart money. Private fund managers do bring in knowledge of very specific industry trends. They have networks, they can open the doors of potential clients. They can take you to markets that you haven't known before. So overall, there is a very good justification why private equity and venture capital funds are important for the country. However, in reality, what we have in the country right now is very limited number of investment funds. They own basically less than 10 million euros collectively. And also when it comes to venture capital funds, we have only a few and they are all registered abroad. There is no, I think there is only one venture capital fund which is registered here in the country. So why is this the situation? Basically, the legal framework in Macedonia is quite old when it comes to investment funding. It is not very well regulated and not very transparent. So having funds like that usually operate with just one investor in them, not more than one, because there is no protection of minority investors. Therefore, what we have been discussing with the government is how to improve the legal framework so that more hybrid public-private investment funds can be created and also multiple investors can be encouraged to bring their financing to Macedonian investment funds. So I will stop here with my response and provide more information in the following panels. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Tanya. You've given, I would definitely say, an objective overview of the current state of the country in terms of the development of the startup ecosystem and what the World Bank has been providing as support. And you've sort of mapped out the key challenges that we've been facing in the previous period. So maybe it would be now a good time to maybe turn the turn the discussion towards what has been done so far, because I know that other donor organizations and you've been also part of this kind of support organizations in the past, not just the World Bank, have recognized Startup Macedonia as someone who can drive change and have a positive impact on the growth and the community. So maybe we can turn the discussion towards Nina and maybe give us an overview or maybe an example of what works, or what would be a good approach in terms of influencing the policy-making process in a positive way.
Thank you, Ivana. Thanks for the direction about for the discussion. And what we can say basically here is our good example. We can definitely compare with other countries and what works and what doesn't, that's for sure. But every ecosystem is very, very different from, even if you look at Skopje as the central ecosystem in terms of other smaller ones that we are now trying to also in parallel work on building and strengthening. They are all different because of the nature of the entrepreneurs. So one thing that I would like to highlight just for us to remember, as Tanya mentioned and as the other ones mentioned before, how was the ecosystem, not even 10 years ago, but 5 years ago, almost non-existent, right? Yes. So what we have accomplished in 5 years, for me personally, as somebody who is working on the field, as we like to call it, you know, always in communication with entrepreneurs, with the startups, with organizations, with media, with everybody that is involved in the ecosystem. I'm super thrilled that we've gotten to this point, and I can only imagine what we can do now that we have a listening ear, and also at least we have and how to say, like an open arm for collaboration. I'm saying this just so for all of us to be, sometimes I'm even also reflecting on the whole situation, you know. We're talking about startups, we're talking about entrepreneurship, we're talking about building a whole ecosystem. I mean, just building a startup is hard enough, but building a whole ecosystem is even harder because you have so much difficult, in a way, entities within this ecosystem that need to align, and we need to fill in gaps and literally building blocks on everything, so we can have a complete ecosystem that will just allow entrepreneurs to try things and to thrive. On the other hand, when you think about, you have the government or actually policymakers on institution, when we think about them, we think about what? We think about slow processes. We think about a lot of bureaucracy. We think about more or less always closed doors instead of open doors. And something that I'm really looking forward to is literally having this open mind for change. I think we all deserve to give a shot, and we all need to open our minds a little bit more, think a little bit more entrepreneurial. And I'm saying this just to highlight that everybody can basically be an entrepreneur, in terms of it's the mindset that you have to start with. And I believe that now that we have on this panel very high level, let's say, people from institution and policymakers, they can be the opening gate towards what we can achieve together. Because in the end, the whole goal is that we have a really strong startup ecosystem, that we can position it as a regional hub, as a hub in the startup hub in the Balkans. But that would mean also a lot of cooperation with policymakers. There's so much of admin stuff and systematic change that needs to happen in order for us to be more agile. And we are more than happy as ecosystem players, builders, founders, everybody in the ecosystem is more than happy to support them in the journey of being more agile, thinking in a more innovative ways, and not being afraid of failure and trying things. I would like to say something that, just to wrap up on this whole situation, that I've learned it basically from my regional manager of SWCP, is the trial and error process. In the startup world, mostly known as pivoting. And if we try new things together and then we see that something works, something doesn't, we sense the market, then we can only improve things. And it can only just get better for all of us. In the end, is the startups, is the entrepreneurs that are creating amazing products and services, and on top of that, creating opportunities for my peers, for the younger generation, but also for anybody who can find their niche and wants to explore and build their skills in the digital and the tech world.
Yes, I completely agree with you. There's no reason why the lean startup approach should be limited just to the startup community. So the fail fast and try again mantra should be present, I think, all over the place. And having these people today on the panel and also in the opening remarks of the event sort of shows the level that Startup Macedonia has sort of enabled to get in the past 5 years since its establishment. While we are at the role of the government, I think I would give the floor to Costa to maybe give a background on the motivation of taking on this role of the director of the Fund of Innovation, and in a way how you see the role of the Innovation Fund in the startup community for the time being, and how do you plan to go forward?
Thank you so much, Ivana. One more time, thank you so much for the invitation to be part of this great panel. I really enjoyed listening to the other speakers, and I think that we have pretty much the same vision, and it's so important in these times to have the same vision, because if you have more people that are believing in the vision, working towards the vision, then I think we can achieve all of our goals. What is happening right now is that the government of North Macedonia for the first time is sitting down and thinking strategically, okay, we have this self-made startup ecosystem that has had help from the state, but not as strategically as it should be. And if there is one positive thing about COVID-19, even though with what is happening around the world, it's very hard to find a positive thing coming out of it. But for us, in our case, it has really made us rethink how our economy is organized and where are we moving, what kind of economy we want to create, what kind of country we want to create, and really think a little bit more innovative. Now, when it comes to the startup community and the startup world, I believe that we are in a phase where we have to go at the same time, go back to the basics, but also move towards the future. Why am I saying going back to the basics? Because we have to go back to what really a startup is. Because what I feel in the daily communication and whenever a strategy is made, there is a big mix-up between SMEs and startups. The state has good strategy when it comes to SMEs, but we have to make a distinction of what is startups and what are SMEs. So as a director of the fund, actually, that's one of the first things that I would really like to invest in, is really go back to the basic and set those definitions. And then what is really important is create an inclusive process. And we have to do this as soon as possible. What do I mean by inclusive process? The startup entrepreneurs must be on the decision table. What is happening right now? We have as I said, self-made startup ecosystem, great support by Startup Macedonia, but I really feel that the startup sector is not where it needs to be, at the place where the decisions are made. So one of the first things that we will do in the next 2 weeks is actually create a startup council, which will help us get information on the needs from the startup community and start putting them into laws, regulations, creating different financial instruments, truly understand what the problems of the startup community are. Because coming from the startup community, I understand the financing part, the funds are only one part of the problem. You have a second part, which we also need to invest in, and that is the education. I've been founder, I've had a company, I've had the money to do, but I've been lacking skills which have prevented me maybe to grow much faster. So we have to see what are those problems, what are those issues that the startup community has that we can help out, whether it's through mentorship, through education, because we really need to start focusing on product-driven companies. We have a great IT sector, but we also have to start thinking of, okay, how do we create technology companies that create products And how do we create a system that eventually will enable us to create what all of us eventually want, a global Macedonian product, our own Skype. So another thing is, yes, you're talking about innovation, about Macedonia becoming a startup hub, but that means also us having those conversations with PayPal, with Stripe, with different companies, and asking them to come to the country, what we can do as a government to have them in our country. So when you create that product, it can be accessed also by global customers. Another idea that we are developing is also we have to find our own niche as a country. So we will sit down with the startup community, with the government, and see where is that segment that our government is going towards, and start actually investing in startups in those areas. And finally, what is really, really important is that we have to do this together. This is a unique opportunity for all of us. The COVID-19 has created an opportunity where we sit down with senior members of the government, with all stakeholders needed for us to create this change. And I believe that very soon, I'm very optimistic that we can create our own government country startup strategy, and really helping the startup community and growing the startup community. And as I said, my personal goal, and I believe everyone's goal here, is really to create that global product.
Thank you so much, Costa. I think the three panelists so far have kind of really mapped out the challenges that our ecosystem is facing. So maybe I know that Startup Macedonia has been active, had been active in the field of lobbying for policy changes. And this has been the ground up approach based on specific needs from startups and investors alike. So maybe Igor, you can shine some light on the process behind what you had to do as an organization to get to the changes that were made recently in the law and trade companies that expanded sort of the definition of who can invest in a company via a convertible note as an instrument, because we know this before was just reserved for the core founder of the company. And it is an important instrument when it comes to angel and venture capital investing.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Ivana. It really brings smiles to my face when I hear Costa and everybody mentioning things that we have been talking about for the past 5 years. That basically we have been mentioning the lean startup methodology, that we should align the lingo that the startup ecosystem is using, and also the language that we believe that all the business sector should be using as well, not just the government. This actually was the spark of actually even Tanya mentioning the need for education, the need for us to educate ourselves on different stages and understand the expectations from each side, because they all come from different expectations. From the very start, all startups would say that they need finances first. And they always say that we need more finance opportunities. But there is much more to be done. But still, something as someone that is working throughout the Western Balkans and supporting startups to access funding, we understood that it's necessary not just to provide funding that usually has been done by the banking sector, but actually from the private sector that will put funding and implement this smart money process. And wherever you could find smart money, you could find it basically in those who really went through the process of building a company and wants to give back, invest, and support new entrepreneurs on their journey to success. Therefore, the need for angel investing and supporting mechanisms were something that we looked upon for a long period. And we identified a lot of obstacles, to be honest. And this is interesting how in the past there was always some measures that were implemented, but deep down there were so many obstacles and so many points that would actually demotivate the founder to create companies and to build the companies out of the country, that we need to tackle them. One of them was especially on the side of investing in as an angel investor, with an Article 28 that was actually limiting, Article 29 that was actually limiting investors and angel investors into being a minority shareholders in multiple companies, and as well as investing in companies through a so-called convertible loan, which is as a functioning instrument is very much present in all Western European countries and the Western world. And we wanted that to be part of the everyday business in our country. So therefore, we started this process, I would say, almost 2 years ago as an initiative. And we wanted to approach it as the government as our client, as our ultimate stakeholder, and really have this approach where we needed to make an analysis. We had to prepare why there has to be actually a change, what will be the benefits. So therefore, with the support of USAID project for business ecosystem support, and also the Swiss entrepreneurship program, we were able to create this document and analysis that actually showcase the benefits of implementation of such programs for supporting angels in Portugal, implementing in Slovakia, and our neighboring Bulgaria, where these practices has been widely implemented and practiced in the past 5-10 years. And therefore, it was presented to the Ministry of Economy. It needed inclusion from representative from Ministry of Finance, the Central Registry, also many other stakeholders that needed to approve all the process until actually we have approved system that would probably be presented into the Parliament and voted as a practice. So something that I would actually like to emphasize was that the startup community needs support from the government, but it needs to be timely, it needs to be fast, because the startup community and startups are really those who are looking for a fast growth and are really able to bring the economy to the next level. So we need the partner to be also responsive and to hear it. And I'm really looking forward to the Startup Council and all the other measures that were mentioned by Costa, and would like to really investigate how we can bring it even more to where we want to take our country.
Thanks, Igor. I think it was a great portrayal of the entire experience that you've gone through, and now everyone is listening. So I'm hoping that on the other side, there will be a push towards moving faster towards this kind of changes and implementing this kind of measures. Well, I think we pretty much covered the part with mapping out the current challenges, but let's think forward maybe into the future. And I think this is a question to all the panelists. If the cooperation between all the sides, because we see the energy, we see the intention on all sides to cooperate and to move things forward at a faster pace. What do you think our startup ecosystem would look like if everything works out 5 years from now? So if all sides play their roles perfectly, and what kind of an ecosystem can you imagine? Who wants to start, or you want to be called out? And maybe we can start from Tanya again.
Sure, no problem. Can you hear me?
Yes. Okay,
so how would I like to see the startup ecosystem in 5 years? Maybe the level of support should continue to be as high as it is now, probably even higher. But I would like to see the structure changed, as we have been discussing. So the government should be heavily involved only in areas where there is no interest from the private sector to support the startups. And this is fully justified for the startups in the very early pre-seed stage, when the idea is mostly still in the head of the entrepreneur. There is some product prototype being developed, but market has not still been tested on how they would react. So this is an area that is part of the development of the startup that is very risky, and it does make sense for the government to support the startups in these very early times of their development. However, as the startup moves into their second year or third year, when they actually start to have some traction on the market, then the private sector should probably take over in supporting the startups to go global. And here, I would like to see business angel groups taking an active role, maybe having 5 or 6 active business angel groups in country, some crowdfunding platforms that will help raise investment financing, equity financing for those startups. The government here could play a small role by being providing some co-financing facilities, so that if the private financing is not fully meeting the needs of the startup, then the government can come in and contribute 10–20% of the cost, but not more than that. So that would enable a lot of very experienced businessmen and entrepreneurs in Macedonia to start sharing their knowledge and their networks and the lessons learned from all the previous failures with the new entrepreneurs and help them on their way forward. Also, I would like to see, and I think it's possible to see, more investment funds in country. The Fund for Innovation has had in their plan for several years now to establish an equity fund. Hopefully this will materialize in the next year or two at best. But it would be very nice to see a hybrid fund created where the government would be a minority shareholder and other investment funds, other institutional investors, high net worth individuals, maybe even the private pension funds can put in their financing to jointly create a large pool of funding that would be managed by private and professional fund managers and invested in different areas. Former director of the fund, Spotovsky, spoke about a regional Western Balkans fund, which is also a very attractive option because private and investors and VCs usually want to look at a bigger portfolio of companies covering a larger market, and North Macedonia is relatively small to tease their appetite. So having looking at Macedonia as part of the whole Western Balkans could be a more attractive option. However, to come to this point where we have private investors who are looking for potential investees, we need to build a solid pipeline of startups. And that has been a challenge for Macedonia. Not that we do not have entrepreneurs with very bright ideas who find solutions to burning problems in the country and beyond. But the problem comes when usually they are asked about their financial projections, their marketing strategies, their business models, many other things which are not usually at the forefront of thinking of an entrepreneur. So for this, they need to be helped. They need to be taught how to think in business terms, how to be able to present it to potential investors, because at the end of the day, it's all about the return on investment. No matter how much the investors talk about their enthusiasm about certain ideas, the bottom line, especially the financial bottom line at the end, is a very important factor in their decision-making process. So how to help the startups move to this stage? What we have been thinking is one option is definitely the accelerators that should be helping startup companies in early stage move to a more advanced phase in their life cycle. They could also use entrepreneurs in residence and other kind of technical assistance that can help companies grow. But what we have also been thinking is that one way for the government to support the growth of the startups could be through pre-investment support. So for example, if an investor comes in and says, can you do a market analysis on how your product will perform on these markets? this is an area where probably the government can co-finance the technical assistance and the business advisory to help the startup develop those plans and make them more investment ready in this particular case. So this is the market failure that we see at this point. I think that this would be a good area to target government resources in. And finally, I'm very glad that it was discussed by the previous panelists, the need to evaluate the measures that are being undertaken, because nobody can get it right from the first try. And there needs to be a system for monitoring and evaluation that will help all the agencies and all the stakeholders involved in this process to see what is the actual impact of the interventions that are being undertaken, what is working well, what are the obstacles, and how to improve them. So I think we do have still a long way to go, but definitely we can see the end, how the end result that is not that far away, and we can work toward achieving that goal. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we can just imagine all of these challenges solved 5 years from now. I think I can now call Costa, because a lot of the things that you've mentioned sort of touch the field of operations of the Innovation Fund. So going forward, what do you think the focus will be when it comes to the short term, like a 1 year, and then the medium term and the long term 5+ years plan in terms of solving all these issues, especially the speed and responsiveness to what the ecosystem needs, and how fast we can move forward?
Yeah, well, I really liked what Tanya mentioned, and I would just like to add, connecting to that, is that all of us have to start creating a culture of investment, on educating people on what it means to invest. And one part where I think all of us can agree on is the private sector is not educated enough on cooperation between the private sector and startups. Everywhere around the world, I'm not even, from more developed country to less developed country, there's this movement of private companies partnering with startups, and the startups providing them with a solution for a certain process. What I'm really sad at this point, but I really hope will change in the future, is to see more braver corporations in Macedonia cooperating with startups. We have big super brands, which unfortunately are lacking true innovation and working with the startup sector. So that, of course, it's up to us to change the system and to educate them on the importance, because you have big corporations that are now maybe giving 5% of their budget to startup ideas and to innovations. So we have to see how to develop this model where private companies will start thinking of cooperating with startups and be an investor, but at the same time they will get the solution they need for a certain problem or a product within their company. As I mentioned at the beginning of my speech, is that we have a very ambitious and robust plan when it comes to what we want to do in the next couple of years. I mentioned we have to do it fast. In an ideal world, the role of the government is to create the right policies and regulations, and this is what we hope to do and achieve, of course, cooperating with the startup community, with entrepreneurs. I mentioned that our first initiative will be the Startup Council, because this will really help us get, and when I mean startup councils, it's not just people from the startup community, but technology experts, financial experts, local and international entrepreneurs, and representatives from associations as the Startup Macedonia, just to really sit down and map out step by step what are the things that we need to work on. Another initiative that we will start working on very soon is our online visa for digital nomads. We will start next month our working group on this. Our whole idea is to invite digital nomads from all around the world to come and live in North Macedonia. We believe we have the competitive advantage. We are very, very well connected to all major European cities. Our standard of living will allow them to have a much better quality of life than in some major European cities. So this is one aspect that we are working towards. Economic citizenship is another project that we are starting to develop, basically attracting high net individuals to invest in Macedonia and in return get citizenship from the country. We have a plan of creating innovation hubs. We will start with the Macedonian village, which is here in Skopje. And then we are looking for 5 more cities where we can create innovation hubs, basically place where someone with an idea, it doesn't even have to be a company, can come there, you know, we can talk about creating a business plan, business strategy, mentorship programs and things like that. And Tanya mentioned the equity fund. And this is a story that I've been hearing of for a couple of years now. And fingers crossed, I think if everything works out, we can do it in the next 6 months. I don't want to promise anything, but I think the fund is ready for it. And I think it should be our next step. The existing financial instruments were great, great results, great investments, but we really need to take things up a notch. And as I mentioned, what is really important and what I believe should be the role of the government, the right policies, the right regulations. I'm sure that the startup sector and our country has the capacity of creating the right product if there is the right atmosphere and the right laws.
Thanks so much. I think we've had a couple of questions from the audience, but I think you kind of addressed them indirectly without even knowing that people are interested to hear this. And I think that now I can move towards Startup Macedonia in terms of what's the plan, or what are the current activities and the current projects, and where do you see Startup Macedonia going forward as sort of the bridge between the private and the public sector. Igor, would you like to take this one?
Hope you can hear me. We have some alarm going in the back, and hopefully everyone is safe. But I would like to first emphasize that we have a lot of demands, and few of them have been addressed, and there's a lot of them to be still processed. Many of them are part in the educational, because we need strong educational system in order to support not just in startups, but also the business sector. We've seen a lot of brain drain, and hopefully we can revert this into a brain gain as to creating an ecosystem that it's open to foreign entrepreneurs to co-create products with Macedonian technology expert and also entrepreneurs in creating, let's say, a better products. That's why we need education on side of entrepreneurship. We have education on side of investors, where we don't have many educated investors, and we need to increase that as well. The same goes, as Tanya mentioned, on educating the companies that it's not just necessary to have a good product, but create the whole system that will qualify them for an investor, and especially private equity investment. That brings us also to part of especially burning topic, the infrastructure and how actually hard it is to run a company in Macedonia. We don't want, we'd like in 5 years to not depend on the stamp of a single administrative person that will hold the process of growth of some startups. So therefore, we suggest implementing digital signatures that would be like kind of like the building blocks that everything will go digital, and we can make much better business, not just startups, but overall the whole business environment. That also brings me into the side of not just starting up companies, but also closing companies and exiting companies, regulating a lot on that side, where investors really much like to understand what is in there in the process when they're going to grow a company and they want to just get the benefits out of it. And this is one of the reasons many investors have been asking me to create models that will be really functional in the way to protect their rights and also to bring value and investing in the companies they want. The other part also is the access to finance. Costa, I believe you mentioned it already, that we need to open up to international services such as Stripe, PayPal, and many others, but also create services of our own to satisfy the local and regional market. Not necessarily we need to just adopt others, but we need to do that, as well as opening up the banking sector for fintech solutions, where the fintech sector would be really leading and opening up opportunities for local companies to go into the e-commerce space and to the digital era. And that brings me again to the part of finance, where we really appreciate the idea that the Fund of Innovation in 4 to 5 years will become a so-called fund of funds that will invest in smaller funds operated privately and support innovation, support growth, and support businesses, not necessarily owning the programs, but supporting those programs, where it will move towards the very inception phase and supporting ideas and hold all the process in actually creating a company, and then the private sector will take it over with the government support. Tanya mentioned co-investment funds, angel funds, VC funds, and of course, the importance of the corporate sector to open up and invest in those funds or invest directly in companies, not just as a corporate social responsibility, but actually as a way to create better opportunities for themselves with support of startups, create corporate ventures, and also accelerators that will benefit them and then benefit the whole ecosystem. I mentioned a lot of things, and I believe we'll have the space to do it, but I just wanted to have this recorded so we can go back in 5 years, as Dan actually mentioned at the start, so we can see what we have managed to do. And really happy for what is following us, as I believe, and even Nina can support me in that, we are far ahead and one of the better developed ecosystems in the region, but we just don't want to be better than the others. We want to be the ecosystem in the region that startups recognize to create businesses and actually compete on European scene and international scene. So this is my vision for the local ecosystem, and looking forward to see what comes to us.
Thanks, Igor. Nina, if you have anything to add.
Of course I have I have a lot of things to add. Don't worry about it.
You have a few minutes because there are a lot of questions coming in from the audience. I at least give 15 to 20 minutes so that we can cover a few of them.
I will try to keep my vision short in terms of the time slot, but my vision is very, very big about what we can do with the startup ecosystem. And I'm super happy that we are more or less aligned in what we can do together from now on. Basically, in 5 years from now, what I would like to see, if we look at now our proudest let's say startup, from what Costa is calling the self-made ecosystem and self-made Startup Macedonia as an association, our proudest, let's say, startup is Brainstar. So Brainstar, we have been as a community supporting from day one. And now with aligned vision with institutions and with policymakers, I would like to see in 5 years from now, startups like this have global success. So in 2025, or 2026, maybe even sooner, that we as a nation, basically, we recognize what a startup is, first of all. So in the mindset of people is that startups are the future of entrepreneurship and the future of how business is done in this country. We also celebrate our successes, like we were celebrating the national football team getting into European Championship. So why not celebrate entrepreneurs? And we remove the stigma of being a businessman in this country is always somebody that is an awful person who is the boss in the company and doesn't treat their employees very well. But we showcase how startups treat their employees and what they do for their customers and etc. And on the other hand, is definitely attracting, as Costa mentioned, with the startup visa, attracting internationals. We have a more diverse community, and it's what I think that the best learning happens when it's peer learning. We can invite all the experts and they can share their know-how, but as soon as entrepreneurs learn from each other and feel free and open to share their struggles, their challenges, and how to overcome them, it's the best learning that happens. Of course, I see the role of this ecosystem in positioning the country as the startup hub in the Balkans, and basically focusing more not just on regional collaboration and not just the Western Balkans or Balkans in general, but we do open up to collaborating with other ecosystems, more developed ecosystems. And with that, we basically create a momentum of giving soft lending as a service to other markets, or supporting our entrepreneurs to go to other markets and be more successful. Because in the end, let's be honest, it's what we do over here is basically we want to support success stories, and we want to create a brand of what our country can be and what our innovative minds can create from here. And definitely location is not that important. We saw this year that we can basically work from anywhere, so why not utilize on that opportunity and of the great bright minds that we have over here. Hope I was short.
Thanks, Nina. It is a great vision, and we'll revisit in 3 to 5 years from now. Before I go into the questions, I think it would be safe to make maybe a tiny conclusion that when it comes to the policy making process, the government should really focus, because we've named a lot of challenges and obstacles that the startups are facing, all ecosystems players are facing at this point, so that the main focus of the government should be to just eliminate those obstacles and challenges in the short to medium term, and then just provide the support in a way that would enable the system, the startup ecosystem to grow. And through the feedback loop, the government will basically learn how to regulate the market or the ecosystem when the market is big, to actually make a huge impact or a difference in the country. I'll just jump to the question section. I think some of them you've already covered. I think the last one that we got, but it's sort of on topic on what you just said and where we want ecosystem going, is what do you think is keeping a Macedonian startup away from global success right now? Because we still don't have that 1, 2, or 5 success cases.
Well, I mean, the question is define success. Do we have our own Skype? No, but do we have a Macedonian brands that are having a global impact? Yeah, we do. There is no culture of talking about the positive things in our country. This is something that we need to change, and it's a process. And I think taking the fact that no one has sat down and created some kind of strategy to help out the sector, I think we are doing quite well considering that. I don't feel that there is anything stopping us. I think that we just need to get better organized and really work as a community. Because what I've noticed, and maybe I'm wrong, so correct me, is that we are now functioning in pockets, you know. So what we need to do is, if we really want to create some kind of change, if we really want to create that global product, is that we all need to sit down together and really start thinking strategically. And this kind of events are network. As a network. And this kind of events are very important. But what is more important is that after this is done, we create a clear document of what are the things that we actually want to achieve. Because the thing is, we can keep inspiring ourselves and keep ourselves motivated, is we need to get our hands dirty and really work for at least a couple of years. And I'm confident that, you know, unicorns just pop up, you know, and sometimes it's a company that you haven't heard of. I mean, I've met so many founders in the past couple of days about companies that I didn't even know existed in our country. And you have companies that are doing health tech, biotech, and we're not familiar with them. So we also have to find these founders and these kind of companies and see how the community can help them.
Great, thanks. The next one, what do you think the role of the Macedonian diaspora could play in helping the startups, the startup ecosystem scene? Any takers?
I can go ahead, of course. And I saw the question now in the chat. Thank you, Meto, for asking this question. We had a meeting maybe like 4 years ago when we were discussing what can the Macedonian diaspora, especially the one in United States and Canada, support in developing the ecosystem, or supporting us in developing the ecosystem. Well, one very, very obvious thing that comes to mind for me in terms of supporting the ecosystem is this people in the diaspora, are Macedonian diaspora, that are already having some kind of success in the, let's say, in the tech world. So they already have that startup mentality and the lean startup way, so they know how to transfer know-how. And I will use this opportunity to officially invite them to soon to be launched the mentoring platform of Startup Macedonia, where they can basically use a couple of hours per month to mentor the local founders. Another thing is basically whenever we receive, let's say, an information or a request from a Macedonian startup trying to get access to the American or to the Canadian or anywhere that we have Macedonian diaspora, and these people are very well infiltrated in the ecosystem, and as well they have a know-how and can support them to get to that market. We will definitely lobby on let's say a measure to have this Macedonian diaspora more engaged as, in a way, startup ambassadors at some point, let's say next year. So these are the, let's say, the tools or the ways that very lean we can jointly do them. Another thing that could be bigger is definitely possibly at some point establishing even a business angel club coming from the diaspora, so they can then invest in startups and give what we like to call the smart money as an option. So here are some suggestions, and we're definitely more than happy to discuss further on and come together with something that would be a win-win for both sides.
Great ideas. I definitely think we'll need to review the entire video and just create the document based on the discussion, because a lot of things came up here. The next question comes from the US Embassy. It's regarding business service organizations. It says that the BSOs are often aware of market failures, regulatory limitations, and other issues that hamper the expansion of startups. However, they sometimes lack influence to successfully lobby for more productive policies. What can these business service organizations do better to influence policymakers? I think this one should go to Startup Macedonia, maybe, or anyone else?
I would take that if I may.
Sure.
So basically, BOS or business support organizations are there always with a mission, and we kind of gather all these partner organizations around, and on the platform of Startup Macedonia, we have now over 40 organizations, each targeting different key aspects of how we actually should influence on government decisions. There is the social impact businesses. There is a lot of done on the side of education in primary, in secondary schools, and also in higher education. So we believe that we need to create kind of these groups or working groups that would target specific agendas, and with the help of Startup Macedonia actually create proposals that we will be able to deliver to the government in order to make the change. We mentioned one of the cases with the angel investing. So this is the investment community that kind of gathered together and made the proposal. So there is a lot to be done on linking initiatives and not initiatives to be working together, because we see a lot of donor-driven activity in our country, and we like to see a more work towards self-reliance and sustainability, and in this way creating programs that are really beneficial. And if we move toward that way, we'll be able to really tackle certain issues better. So I would say create clusters, create communities, and influence the government on burning issues would be the way to do it.
Igor, and I think we have room for one more question. Sorry, we have room for one more question. I think I will make this one should be short and simple. This one is for Costa. When will the activities for the Scientific and Technology Park at the engineering campus start? Because,
yes.
Okay.
We will actually start with phase 1 very soon. We're just finalizing some legal procedures, and we already have a private-public partnership for phase 1 of the park.
Okay, that was short and sweet. So I think we're definitely going to stay within the...
If I can just add one very important thing, because I read some of the comments
Okay.
about the fund's work. I'm too early to comment on anything, but I think it's really important to in a way sum up this conversation, because a lot of people are saying, oh, I have a great idea, but it's not working out. And what I really wanna send a message to everyone is that the idea is the first step, and it's only the first step. What is really important is that it's not the last step. Sometimes you may have a great idea, but you don't know who your customers are. You don't have a commercialization plan. You don't have a marketing plan, and sometimes that idea will fail. So what it's a message that I want to send to everyone is, yeah, start with the idea, but what is really important is that you work towards each process of making that product successful.
Thanks, Costa. Thanks, Tanya, Igor, and Nina for this great conversations. I really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope that this is just the beginning of the discussion, and that we'll have the opportunity to discuss even further, and that the majority of the things and the ideas and the activities that were mentioned during this panel are going to come true, if not in the first year, then in the midterm or the long-term vision. So thanks everyone for joining us. I hope you also enjoyed this. And I think I'll give the floor now to our very own Startup Macedonia project manager of the platform, Maria. Will she be joining us?
And thank you for the lovely panel before we conclude. Thanks for the lovely panel. I'm definitely looking forward to achieving these goals that we actually set in front of everybody.
Good evening.
Thank you, everyone.
Good evening, everyone from me. It's a bit difficult to actually be the last speaker and provide a summary after such a fruitful and abundant discussion from everyone, from their excellencies, from the governmental and state officials to my very passionate colleagues within the ecosystem. So I'll just provide a very brief summary with hope that we're going to inspire everyone here and ourselves. Our national coordinator of the Global Entrepreneurship Week shared with us that this week is a moment to celebrate innovation, to inform the startups and everyone within the ecosystem, in particularly aspiring startuppreneurs, about the existing resources and the steps that we plan to take as innovation enthusiasts in the name of innovation and creating that innovative idea into a concrete business. The Deputy Prime Minister of Economic Affairs took the step even further and challenged the startups to actually challenge their own limits and informed all of us that for the first time, a startup support strategy is going to be devised. Our ardent partners, the US ambassador, praised the efforts of Startup Macedonia and the rest of the ecosystem representatives in the incredible job that we have achieved thus far in bridging the gap between the policies that are needed in the ecosystem and the needs of the startups themselves, and assured us that they're here to help all ecosystem representatives in fostering robust discussion for making policies that enable a favorable environment for startups and innovative businesses. Her Excellency, the Swiss ambassador, congratulated us on the enriched program of the Global Entrepreneurship Week from one event back in 2018 to 44 events this year, and stressed the needed communication and collaboration between policymakers on one hand and ecosystem representatives. For the nature of the ecosystem demands that, because the nature of the startup ecosystem, of the innovation system, is very complex. Mr. Despotovsky has passed on the mantle to his next successor, Mr. Petrov, and is fully aware of the potential that the Fund of Innovation and FITD has, and hopes that Mr. Petrov shall upscale and make that potential come to fruition. My colleague, our colleague Ivana, has put the panel speakers in the hot seats and asked some quite tough questions. The World Bank representative, Ms. Tatiana Markovska, spoke or highlighted the needed transition that needs to happen in our own national ecosystem from grants availability to equity availability. And in order for that move to happen, we need to have private investments. Our own co-founder, Ms. Nina Nikolic, made us look in the rearview mirror. Actually, to be more precise, she made us look 5 years ago when there was very little, if anything, within our own national ecosystem. But she encouraged us to celebrate the stepping stones that we have made, for they are really truly remarkable milestones. And she has ensured us and inspired us and encouraged to keep on nurturing the agile mindset and methodology, and to continue or apply the pivoting method within the process of creating a favorable environment for startups, our current startup peers, and in particularly the next generation of startups. On to the current director of FITD, Mr. Petrov. He shared with us that we are going to have a startup council, which will put startups onto the table of the decision-making process. So this council is going to be a hotbed, which will provide us with an in-depth insight of the multi-layered needs of the startups themselves, not just finance, but mentoring, education, so that we actually are able to get to the global Macedonian product. And Mr. Igor Majov, another of our Startup Macedonia co-founders, have highlighted or elaborated that many times the implementation of startup money came to a lot of impediments, and the need of angel investments also faced a lot of obstacles. But with the initiative of Startup Macedonia for the amendment of Article 29 and the support that we've received from the state sector and our ecosystem representatives and members, we are finally going to be able to amend Article 29 and to tackle that obstacle down. I would like to thank each and every one of you for being here with us tonight, taking the time to celebrate this milestone. And on the behalf of the Global Entrepreneurship Week National Coordinator, the entire Startup Macedonia team, thank you for your attention and time, Your Excellency, state officials, innovation enthusiasts, and we hope that you shall continue to support us as we pave the road to a Macedonian global product. Thank you again, and have a lovely evening.
Thank you, and see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.